Hey everyone, I wanted to take a chance to host one last discussion topic right before the upcoming Capcom presentation for Tokyo Game Show 2022, as we're expecting to get a bunch of free title update 2 goodies being fully revealed once and for all. In this video, I want to try to tackle all of the monsters we're expected to see, all of the new features that are going to be added in, and all of the new quality of life changes that we can expect, and of course, what surprises they have yet to detail since we have 2 major ones still pending. But before any of that, I certainly want to encourage all of you to let me know in the comments what monsters you want to see for this specific update, and what's one feature you certainly want to see other than of course layered weapon armors, which basically is something that everyone seems to be asking for over and over again. So format wise, we can expect everything they have done up until now to basically continue. They'll quickly show a trailer and then break it down in about a 15-minute span. Something that I've actually noticed is that in the last 2 presentations, a few days after said presentation, they send out a questionnaire asking players how they basically like the presentation itself and what they could do to improve it and so forth. So it certainly seems like they're listening to player feedback on how they can make these presentations a bit better and a bit quicker. Now, one of the things that I expect them to spend some time in is discussing some of the quality of life improvements, and that's probably one of the things that is certainly being discussed the most, starting with one of the major changes that we can expect coming in the form of modified investigation quests, where on the PC side of things, players have been using mods to change the parameters of certain quests, and it's leading to normal players who aren't interested in cheating or anything of the sort getting a clone copy of said quest. If you, for whatever reason, don't necessarily know how this happens, essentially when you go into another player's investigation quest as you're trying to level up, you end up getting as a reward a copy of the quest that you were just recently thrown into. So this ends up multiplying that same modified quest over and over as you end up hosting it most likely without knowing that it's being modified. So knowing that some of these quests are out there is something that Capcom wants to address and make sure that all players know, to make sure not to continue to basically pass around to other players without their knowledge. So most likely they're going to either make a notification appear whenever you boot up or whenever you're about to embark on an investigation quest, or they could just simply change the color of the investigation quests that are like completely modified, so you know not to pick up any of those quests, and you could just let them get auto deleted by the queue as it maxes out at 120, I believe. And while that's a PC centric issue, the Nintendo Switch currently also has a crash error where they're going to be addressing that as well, where essentially the game will crash and stop, but potentially also corrupt your save data as well. This is tied to the guild cards that they provided with a temporary fix, but of course a patch will be addressing this in the free title update number 2 as well. So they will either address the way guild cards currently work, or they're going to reformat the information so you have different guild cards, since probably players don't necessarily want to delete all of the ones that they've currently collected. A couple of other changes you can expect, of course, is some of the ones that they've mentioned, with the radio menu now having 8 specific loadouts instead of 4. This is basically them adding 4 extra loadout additions to the current roster. You will also have the option to lock your armor sets so you won't be able to sell it by mistake. This is just basically following in the same format of talismans, and presumably weapons are going to get that same treatment for the next free title update. Another one of the quality of life changes that we know are coming is the fact that level caps for armors will also be increasing, netting you more raw defense for each one of your armors, since they'll be boosted just a little bit higher, basically based on rarity. So the higher rarity, less levels but higher defense, lower rarity armors, more level ups, equal amounts of defense. This basically means 2 things: A, to offset the curious crafting boosts where people are sacrificing defense and resistances for skills and decoration slots, but most likely also the fact that we're getting brand new and plenty of tougher quests. And this leads us to the second biggest new addition into the game, and something that's been a little bit of a point of contention, where people have discussed what does it actually mean when they say in the roadmap powered up monsters. I've basically seen 3 type of theories kind of sprawl up because of this. Some people suggest that essentially just means master rank Apex monsters are going to be officially listed in your quests options. You're no longer going to see them just pop up randomly on afflicted investigation quests as like a second hunt monster. They're just going to be officially now with their very own rewards, something that you didn't necessarily have back in base Monster Hunter Rise. They're going to have their own armors, their own weapons, and essentially have their own rewards. That's one theory that I've seen being tossed around. Another one suggests that people have been saying basically the addition of deviant monsters being added in, which of course, implications wise, I just don't necessarily see that happening, because it would essentially mean them adding more than just 4 monsters for this update. That would actually balloon up the amount of monsters that they're going to add, and it's kind of like unexpected, and it probably would have been something that they would have revealed by now. They wouldn't be saving it for the last trailer before the actual update. What's most likely going to be happening is the fact that it's something that I talked about before that we saw in patch 10.01, and this is the addition of 6-star investigation quests. I made an entire video breaking this down, but those basically who didn't necessarily know or weren't paying attention, about 5 or so monsters are expected to get afflicted 6-star quests being added as a brand new tier. Espinas, Furious Rajang, Seething Bazelgeuse, Pyragnakadaki, and Gore Magala. 3 other monsters have been theorized, they are not confirmed, to also be added into their ranks as well. And these are the Elder Dragons, Teostra, Kushala de Oro, and Chameleos, also be added into this 5 monster roster, making tier 6 afflicted investigation monsters 8 in total. So whether Capcom actually means more powered up monsters, just the addition of more afflicted tiers, this is something that I think is probably the more logical answer to it, but we don't necessarily know, and this is why we've seen a lot of people spawn up with different theories as to could they just completely add something completely off the wall. At the same time, they could just add the afflicted monsters and investigations, since we are expecting, and this is something that I also touched upon in that video as well, that for free title update number 3, there will be another tier added as well, and this will be afflicted 7-star monsters, 7-star investigation quest, which of course means the level cap will also be increased as well. This is something that was found in the game file. Now, some data does suggest that several Rathalos, Gold Rathian, Crimson Glow, Valstrax, Scorn, Magnamalo will be at the very least the base of what makes up a 7-star afflicted quest, or anomaly quest is what they're actually called. But do expect there are more to be added, since like I mentioned multiple times, this is just, unfinished data as of right now. Patch 12.01, aka free title update number 2, is going to give us more details regarding this, so do hold out on what to expect for free title update number 3 just for now. Although I will once again make the clarification that some people have asked me regarding Rajang and normal Bazelgeuse and even Shagaru Magala as to how come they're not having an investigation quest right now, and that is most likely something that they're just going to get added in when they get added in. The data doesn't suggest anything right now, but most likely they'll come in one of these 2 batches. Now, since we don't actually expect any new maps or any new arenas being added in, which I do think is a little bit of a bummer, we were expecting maybe the tower to make an appearance. That would have been a great arena to be having added in, and Flaming Espinas and Lucent Nargacuga have been known to be fought in it as well, and one of the monsters that we're going to be talking about in just a bit also fought in the tower. It would have been great for them to actually add it, but it doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. With that said though, obviously we do know that Flaming Espinas, like I spoke about at length in a previous video, I think it ultimately justifies the spot as a new monster addition, even though White Espinas, or as some people actually called it in the comments, Pearl Espinas, would have justified itself as well. I certainly made a video about White Espinas and why I thought that would have been a great addition, but a lot of people suggested that as a free title update number 3 or maybe free title update number 4 monster, it makes more sense for them to add it in. Ultimately, I think them adding 3 Espinas to the game doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, so Flaming Espinas is most likely the last one we'll be getting for Sunbreak. I did see some discourse in that video as well, as some people suggested that instead of what we are expecting to be the Fire Mitsuzune to be added in, maybe it would be Black Diablos instead. And I certainly wanted to take a second to clarify some of those things as to why it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but again, at the end of the day, Capcom can do whatever the hell they want. Ultimately, this is a subspecies and not a rare species. We are expecting to see more rare species being added in, and ultimately, I think people would be rather pissed expecting a new monster to be added in, a feature monster at that, for free title update number 2, and then they end up getting Black Diablos, something that we've kind of seen in multiple games by now. This is why a lot of suggestion has been said regarding this Fire Mitsuzune, and there's plenty of data suggesting why. Basically, it all started with 2 armor sets that were added in 11.01, that would be the patch. and one of those armors was for the yet unnamed Espinas at the time. Now we know, of course, it's Flaming Espinas. The other armor was for a yet unnamed Mitsuzune, which still remains to be unnamed. Then after that patch, we saw that a new weapon description was also added, but to be clear, there was 6 actual weapon descriptions at the time. When it comes specifically to this Flaming Mitsuzune, if you will, it actually reads as follows. A flashing of this untarnished divine blade leaves butterflies in his bloodthirsty wake. This is the long source description of this Flaming Mitsuzune. But like I said before, at the time, there were also 6 weapon descriptions that we didn't know anything about, 4 of which ended up being for free title update number 1 monsters. This is why we knew ahead of time which ones were the monsters that were going to be added: Gold Rathian, Silver Rathalos, Seething Basu, and Lucent Narga. So as of right now, where we stand now, only 2 are left. We know one of them is Flaming Espinas, and the other one is this fire element based Mitsuzune. Now, one of the things that I theorized in that video, in the last video as well, was them repurposing Apex Mizu's attack, some of the visual effects that they use specifically, and then just making complete use of Apex monsters that are completely being ditched altogether. Some of which we do expect them to see being added as, you know, afflicted monsters as well, maybe down the road. But again, we don't have any suggestion for that. But for them to actually rework on Mizu, which is a rather popular monster, with the understanding that it doesn't necessarily have a lot of variants or subspecies. We do know of certain subspecies of it in other games, and of course the Apex version of it. So them providing us with a new version of it probably goes a long way. Now, as far as things pointing us in the right direction, this is basically where it stops. There's just speculation and theory crafting done from this point forward, since a lot of people are trying to make one of them specifically happen and the other one is just kind of being thrown out there. I will say though, specifically, there's no game data being seen in game right now suggesting of any of these 2 monsters. I just want to make that extremely clear. So first and foremost is Molten Tigrex. This of course fits the bill. He is a rare species, and it was finally brought back for Monster Hunter Stories 2 as post-launch DLC, which is something that people weren't necessarily expecting to see. Now, Tigrex in many of the previous games also had 2 versions of itself, a subspecies or a rare species or a variant, or anything along those lines. In this game, there's just a base version of it, so people have been suggesting that at some point some other version of Tigrex would have eventually been added in. This is why Molten Tigrex to a lot of people makes a lot of sense, and when it comes to looking for monsters that are certainly going to give you a challenge, this is certainly one that fits the bill. Now, the second monster that also people are saying is a bit more ambiguous, and this is a brand new Serragios, a rare species. This is a monster that so far has only 1 special species entirely other than the base one. And since we know that variants aren't going to be added specifically for this patch, this would have to be an entirely new monster. So unless Capcom is willing to throw in 3 new monsters in one specific patch, and on top of that, all of the monsters people have kind of talked themselves into being actually expecting deviants or more afflicted difficulty monsters or anything like that, this would make this a rather beefy update if this were to actually turn out to be true. So ultimately, I'm a bit skeptical on them adding a brand new Serragios or anything along those lines. I think they will most likely just do the most basic thing and throw in a Glavenus or a Deviljho into the patch and call it a day, since they are technically giving us 2 new monsters and a Molten Tigrex on top of that. This would actually be 3 monsters with the addition of maybe even Deviljho or Glavenus. That would actually be 4 brand new fire monsters, which I think ultimately people would be really upset about to actually see. But you know, again, it's Capcom. They could do whatever the hell they want. So that's about all what I expect for them to share in this specific presentation. I don't necessarily think they're going to leave out any sort of major new features left untouched for any sort of further reveals after this specific presentation. Maybe some smaller quality of life improvements, but most likely they're going to talk about anything major that is going to be, of course, patch note worthy in this specific event. Certainly, I want to hear your guys' feedback. Do let me know what you want to see added, what new features, what new monsters, anything you want to let me know. Hit me up in the comments. And if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.